Hello and welcome back to the channel. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to all of my viewers who share stories with me. On any given day, I have a number of different things that come across my feed, whether it's something I'm looking up myself or something that is on social media already through Facebook or through email or something someone has sent to me. So thank you very much. I don't get a chance to cover everything, but when time permits, I do cover various stories. But anyway, one that got my attention, and I wanted to share that with you really quick here, is Germany officially recognizing colonial era Namibia genocide. We're starting to see a lot of that worldwide, where those who committed genocide are starting to recognize or at least admit it, okay? I want you to listen to some of the details though, because in many cases, when they are acknowledging genocide or something horrible that has happened to large groups of black people in time, many times the black people are still left feeling like, is this really righting the wrong of the past? We recently saw that with the story of Black Wall Street and how after all of this time they're finally acknowledging it. But some of the survivors are still feeling dissatisfied with how things are being handled, right? As a matter of fact, there was an event that was scheduled that's being canceled for a number of different reasons. One, because there's a potential threat for violence, and then the other is because those who planned the event felt like they couldn't meet the demands of the attorneys and the actual descendants or survivors of this American Holocaust. Okay, I know people don't like to call that a Holocaust, but it is what it is, right? Anyway, I want you to go ahead and listen at this story, some of the details of what's going on with what they are offering as compensation, and listen at how some of the people who survived this, or the descendants, listen at how they feel about it, because they are not impressed, right, with what is being offered to them. But anyway, listen at this, and I will be right back.
Germany has officially acknowledged committing genocide during its colonial occupation of Namibia, and announced financial aid worth more than €1.1 billion, £940 million, $1.34 billion. German colonizers killed tens of thousands of Herero and Nama people there in early 20th century massacres. Foreign Minister Heiko Maas said his country was asking Namibia and victims' descendants for forgiveness. But activists say the aid is not enough to address the suffering inflicted. The money will apparently be paid out over 30 years through spending on infrastructure, healthcare and training programs benefiting the impacted communities. We will now officially refer to these events as what they are from today's perspective, genocide, Mr. Maas said, adding that colonial-era actions should be discussed without sparing or glossing over. A spokesman for the Namibian government told AFP news agency Germany's recognition was a first step in the right direction. What happened during the genocide? Friday's statement came after 5 years of negotiations with Namibia, which was under German occupation from 1884 to 1915. The atrocities committed have been described by historians as the forgotten genocide of the early 20th century in what was then known as German Southwest Africa. The UN defines genocide as a number of acts, including killing, committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. The genocide began in 1904 after a Herero and Nama rebellion over German seizures of their land and cattle. The head of the military administration there, Lothar von Trotha, called for the extermination of the population in response. Survivors from the Herero and Nama population were forced into the desert and later placed in concentration camps where they were exploited for labor. Many died of disease, exhaustion and starvation, with some subject to sexual exploitation and medical experimentation. It is thought up to 80% of the indigenous populations died during the genocide, with a death toll in the tens of thousands. Germany has previously acknowledged the atrocities, but ruled out paying reparations. In 2018, they repatriated some human remains to Namibia, which had been used as part of now discredited research attempting to prove the racial superiority of white Europeans. The latest deal was reportedly agreed during a round of negotiations held by special envoys in mid-May. A declaration is expected to be signed by the German foreign minister in the Namibian capital, Windhoek, next month before being ratified by each country's parliament, German media reports say. President Frank-Walter Steinmeier is then expected to travel to the country to officially apologize. What are campaigners saying? Laidlaw Paranganda, a Herero activist and chairman of the Namibian Genocide Association, said the offer of development aid was not enough. We're actually not accepting that offer because our people have lost lands, they have lost their culture, and a lot of them have fled to Botswana, South Africa, and some of them were taken to Togo and Cameroon, he told BBC World Service. He insisted that Germany should buy back ancestral lands now in the hands of the German-speaking community, which reportedly makes up less than 1% of the population. People are getting impatient, especially the minority black people who don't have a piece of land, he said. And from what I'm hearing from some of the people, there will be a land revolution. People will grab the land by force. So we must actually try to avoid these things. Mr. Moss said the negotiations had aimed to find a common path to genuine reconciliation in memory of the victims, with members of the Herero and Nama communities closely involved in talks. Another point of contention is around language. The agreed deal focuses on the idea of reconciliation over formalized compensation, with Mr. Moss describing the aid package as a gesture rather than reparation. Jürgen Zimmerer, professor of global history at University of Hamburg, told the BBC World Service a great number of descendants of the victims of the genocide felt excluded. This is quite a problem if reconciliation is the aim, he said. How do you reconcile with the victims if the victims feel left out of the entire process? Tim Wool, writing for the BBC earlier this year about the negotiations, said the discussions were the first of their kind by a former colonial power. He wrote that many Herero and Nama living in overcrowded areas or informal settlements had hoped the deal would go some way to restoring land access and some of the prosperity their ancestors enjoyed before the genocide.
Okay, now this story that you just listened to, it only highlights just a little bit of what happened. I mean, it doesn't get into the gory details of what happened during this genocide. I mean, we're talking about skulls of Namibian victims that were taken away from their lands. They didn't get a proper burial. What happened to these people was just horrible, right? The murder was just so horrific that you can even barely comprehend how someone could do that to another human being, right? Much less large groups of human beings like this. Similar things have happened around the world. Look at what happened in Australia. We covered some of this in the Whited Out documentary series of how worldwide there were genocides of black people. Okay, genocides of black people by white Europeans. Now, these are details that many don't want to talk about. They want to hide these things. They don't want to talk about it anymore. They say it's in the past. But you have the descendants of people who went through these things who are saying, well, no, it's not just about saying this is in the past. When you look at the effects that this still has on our lives today, right? No one wants to talk about the effects that it still has on our lives today. Black people are deeply affected by these things, and for the most part, people want us to shut up about it, right? While at the same time acknowledging the horrendous things that have happened to others. Now, I saw a statement today on AOL. It was in the comment section where there was someone basically saying that how can we heal from the past if we keep bringing the past up, right? And how can you expect people today to want to even concern themselves with what happened to black people way back when? And I'm paraphrasing what they said. I thought about that statement. I said, well, that's a very typical statement of what is said about black people, right? But when it comes to the Jewish Holocaust, when it comes to other tragedies that have happened to Europeans, even recent tragedies like 9/11, when it comes to just a number of different things that have happened to other people, they want you to remember. But as it relates to what they have done to black people, they want you to forget. They don't think we should talk about it anymore. As a matter of fact, they believe that bringing these things up is what keeps racism alive. I don't understand that kind of thinking, but anyway, I tend to agree with the people, the Herrera people, that what they are offering is just not enough. When you think of the loss of human life, and they're basically saying, look, we will help build your infrastructure. And get this, I'm going to reread this part. It says, the money that they're talking about giving, what they're offering, will apparently be paid over a 30-year period through spending on infrastructure, healthcare, and training programs benefiting the impacted communities. So they want to offer you healthcare, okay? Infrastructure, meaning, okay, we may build some buildings for you. We may repair or install some roads, or make things a little easier, maybe put some water systems in, things of that nature. And it's going to be over a 30-year period. Training program. So they're going to educate people, pay for their education, right? But nothing that's going to affect every person who is a descendant of these tragedies. Because some of these people aren't going to go to school. Some of these people aren't going to drive, right? Some of these people won't need health care. But their lives have still been greatly negatively impacted by what happened to their ancestors a long time ago. And so what these groups are looking for, okay, even here in the U.S., something similar was stated, not offered, but stated as a possible solution to how to remedy what has happened to so-called black people here in America. And a lot of people were saying, well, look, I don't want to go through I don't want your education, or it's not going to help me if you're going to just build a school in the black community or build some type of community center. I mean, that's not going to help or affect everyone's lives in a way that is impactful. Okay? Building businesses in the black community is not enough, because who's going to run those businesses? Who's going to earn the money from those businesses? And how will that affect the millions of people who are elders or the younger generations? Is it going to be certain black people that you're going to give grants to that in some cases may only employ a handful of people that won't really do anything in terms of remedying the situation that they're in? And so when you hear these types of solutions, and especially in this case, they're talking about over a 30-year period. Some of these people are going to be dead and gone. You see, you say to yourself, how is this going to make up for the horrific things that have happened to black people? Especially when you look at other situations where communities and countries around the world are constantly giving millions and millions and millions, and I even hear billions being thrown out there as compensation for those who are survivors of the Jewish Holocaust. But to say that you're going to give this to so-called black people and their lives aren't going to be directly affected, it's not going to bring back those who were killed, and of course that's not going to happen. But most of the people who are descendants aren't going to even feel any type of change from this so-called compensation. And so that's what they're talking about here. They're like, I'm sorry, it's not enough. When you start to ask about putting money in hand, or putting something in hand for every descendant, all of a sudden people get real, they get real touchy, okay? Saying that no one deserves that type of compensation. It kind of reminds me of what happened to the Native Americans, right? And of course, there's a debate on what the Native Americans really truly look like. But it kind of reminds me of how you have those who really believe that giving Native Americans some of the worst land that was here in the U.S., just a little chunks of it, calling it a reservation. And it doesn't even make up for even a small, even the smallest percentage of anything that can be considered good enough, right? They feel like, okay, we gave you this little bit of land, now shut up. That's it. That's all you're getting, right? It kind of reminds me of that, how you can just take somebody's whole land and give them a little corner over here, right? Just say you own 100 acres. Somebody come and take it from you. And not only take it from you, take your life, they displace you and they uproot you and all kinds of things, devastate your mind, just all kinds of things happen to you. And you haven't even mentally or spiritually recovered from it. Then someone comes along later and says, you know what, we took your 100 acres, we're going to give you a quarter of an acre. Hopefully that should suffice with, adding or being a remedy to what we did to you. Can you imagine that? Well, we could talk about this stuff till we're blue in the face. It's not going to change what has happened in the past, and it's not going to change the mindsets and the hearts of those who have done these things. The only thing that will change that will be the Creator. Okay? Our Creator will have to be the one to come in and remedy the things that have happened in this world. Anyway, what are your thoughts on what Germany is offering these people? Do you think it's enough? Do you think they should give them more, do more? What are your thoughts? In the comments below, share your thoughts. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Share and like this video. And with that, I am out. Be sure to ring the bell to be notified of new uploads on this channel. And also, comment, share, like, and subscribe.